Hey everyone, welcome back to What Do You Know with Nick and Devin.
I'm Devin.
And I'm Nick. And this is our third episode.
Yeah.
We're chugging along here.
We're doing it.
Doing it. Okay, never mind. Yeah, this is fun and exciting. The first couple episodes we learned about tattoos and Jefferson's Malort. Now we're going to learn about some other things.
I'm very excited.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we said in the first episode, how we don't know anything about anything really, still really resonates. And I'm eager to continue to learn.
Totally.
Which is like, I don't know, super nerdy for me to say. I'm like, oh, I love learning.
But it's fair.
Yeah, no, I mean, you got to expand your knowledge, keep the brain juicy and full of wrinkles.
And when I think about my brain, it's the juice that counts.
Right. Well, I mean, like, you know, in the second Indiana Jones, when they eat the monkey brains, and then, like, how succulent they looked.
So good.
Would you eat monkey brains?
I probably would, because I'm pretty sure my grandmother used to make cow brain back when I was little.
Yeah.
I mean, we ate we ate the eye, we ate the tongue, we ate the brain, all of it.
I've had tongue, especially like a lingua taco. Like,
lingua is fucking
so
fire.
Good.
Yeah.
But I haven't had heart, but my great aunt has been known to make heart before. And I think it's my cousin had it, and he said it was just like super like tough because it's like it's just a constantly moving muscle. I mean, I hope it's constantly moving.
Thank you.
And so it's just like this tough meat, and it's like
it doesn't sound good.
No.
I feel like you would like marinate that, right? Like let it sit.
I think so.
Let some of like the muscle break down. Maybe some citrus.
I don't know how Mary Lou made it, but
call her up.
I'll ask.
Okay. You know what? We're gonna take a caller right now. Mary Lou, get on the fucking phone. Yeah. So I forgot what we were talking about, to be honest.
Succulent brains.
Oh, right.
And somehow we were gonna segue that into your topic for today.
I can't.
All right. Well, here's our segue. We're gonna take it on a Chicago tour, and now we're here.
Perfect. Speaking of like learning things and like always wanting to learn things, we'll go back to that.
Perfect.
What do you call it? It's interesting, like in the world of social media and just the internet in general, like constantly being bombarded with different facts and different knowledge points. I mean, even looking up this topic today, thinking about like different points in history that you don't really learn about or that you don't see every side of it. And so like in an expansion, it was while I was doing these notes, but just looking at like American worldview versus like total worldview or different perspectives and things like that. Very, very different and very specified. Right? Like we're very curated in what we want to make sure that, you know, us as young people learn. And you don't see everything. And so like, I mean, honestly, it's only because I looked more into Thomas Jefferson and Alexander. Like, we'll get into like some early American. Yeah. And I was just like, got a little bit of rabbit hole kind of issue. But I mean, like looking at like Hispanic history within the United States, like 0.1% of what we know about impactful American Hispanic history is so small and like very glossed over. You know what I mean? From Mexican-American War to the first Hispanic justice on the Supreme Court, like there's nothing in between. And so I think through this podcast, it's really interesting to be able to like open those doors more and for us to be able to take that on and say, hey, so this is probably what you learned in history, or this is what maybe you kind of know colloquially. Let me show you the varying different perspectives and probably more so the right perspectives.
Well, I mean, everything's whitewashed.
Correct.
And like history is always written by the winner, or so they say. And you know, white people, they be whiting and just constantly
I'll be on a t-shirt.
They be whiting. They constantly just writing their own history from their own perspective.
Totally.
Vilifying anyone who's not them.
Right.
And it's terrible. And it's just, there's so much, like you said, so much other rich history and much knowledge and stories from all these different people of color and whatnot that I think provide better and valuable lessons.
Totally. And I think that for our sort of platform, and for podcasts and any sort of informational medium that there is, you have a it's kind of like a journalistic responsibility, you know what I mean, to present the fact, flat. It's almost like BBC.
Yeah.
There's no bias there, right?
Right,
Like, it's
right.
just presenting what we know, all of these things. And of course, like, as we go through things and we fact check ourselves, even as we go through different information, or as if we learn more in different sources, like, that will become apparent. But I think to go into this and say, hey, I want to make sure that everything I'm presenting to you is everything that I know to be true during my own research, and present that to the world and to the people. And hopefully people, one, get a kick out of it. Two, expand their knowledge and their brain form. Brain form's not a thing.
It is now.
It is now, folks.
Expand your brain form.
Expand your brain form. And so that makes me think of, there's like this ADHD thing where that's gone.
That's ADHD.
And that's ADHD for you. Oh, but basically, like,
Here it is.
Yeah, we're back. Basically, you misuse a lot of words because you're thinking so quickly that, like, your brain, like, grasps. Does that make sense? Like, your brain, like, grasps like what you're trying to say, but you've moved on to it. So you grab the first of a word and then you just, like, finish it, but it might not be the right thing.
Oh no.
That's what I've read.
Oh,
You want to fact check that?
So
right.
much. No.
Like, you know what you're saying, and then you go back and you're like, no, that word isn't. I didn't use that right.
No, I both love and hate learning about like ADHD and some other things, because it just, like, unlocks things that I think are normal to me.
Yeah.
Or other people. Like you just said this fact, and I'm like, oh yeah, I do that all the time. And you're like, oh no, that's ADHD. I'm like,
right.
Oh, cool. That checks out now, I
Sick.
guess.
Yeah.
I love learning about myself. I should probably go see someone.
I will say that's the other side of, like, learning so much, or, like, having all this bombardment of fact and things like that, is there's also this, like, oh, I'm just gonna kind of project my own experience onto these facts that you're giving me. So do I have ADHD, or do I just kind of, associate with some of these symptoms sometimes? It's like kind of like astrology. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
like you have a certain, like, oh, this is my horoscope. Oh my God.
Right.
These things did actually happen to me today, but they're, like, so vague that it's, like, bullshit.
there was this guy on BBC who he did, like, a 3-hour NHS, like, ADHD test. And they were like, you don't have ADHD.
Oh.
And then he did another one with, like, an online service with, like, a licensed person.
Right.
It was like 45 minutes, you have ADHD. And then another guy, 10 minutes, and he was like, of course, I'm writing you a prescription now. And he's like, well, I'm going to trust the actual, like,
3 hour.
like, this very intensive, like, this whole thing versus, 10 to 15 minutes or 45 minutes of just, like, bullshit over Zoom. Like,
maybe I should take a 3-hour test.
that's what I'm saying. See, this is what I'm saying. Is like, yeah, I want to go do that.
Right.
But, like,
I just think you're
who do
getting
I
a
trust?
lot. Yeah. I feel like with the 3 hours, you're just getting way more data points to be like, you do or you don't.
Right.
Or you're somewhere along in between.
We might be somewhere along in between.
I think
we just start sorting Ritalin and see what happens. You know what I mean?
there's only one way to
There's
find
only
out.
one way to find out. Some Adderall, call it a day.
And get our brain forms going.
Okay, all that to say,
Yeah.
thank you, ADHD. Let's kick into a topic.
Yeah, please.
Okay, cool. We'll start off with we've been posing questions before we jump into the topic, so I'm going to pose a question to you.
Uh-huh.
If you won the lottery, what would you do? What's the first thing you do with it? First purchase.
How big is the lottery? Is it like billions or millions?
Okay. Millions. All
Thank
right.
you.
Calm down. I'm sorry. Is the purchase different?
No, not really.
Okay.
I mean, I would never be able to spend $1 billion. So, all right. So millions. I think my first thing is to get out of debt.
Fair.
That's always like my number one thing. I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna pay off the house, pay off.
You're calling all the
anything I have.
companies.
Yeah,
and you're like,
what up?
you have like 8 lines going.
Yeah. Mass email out
Right.
all the creditors.
Right.
Cancel my debt.
Containing your information.
Right.
And everyone's welcome to hack at this point in Devin's email.
Yeah. So I think paying off debt, and then, I always want to believe that I would, like, keep the money and not just blow it all. Like,
Sure.
be on paying off my debt. I'd probably give like a little bit to my family.
Sure.
I gotta be nice.
Very Midwestern of you.
No, I'd be nice. Give some to my family, just a little chunk to help them out as well.
Sure.
I would take care of my family, get rid of their debt, my debt, and then I'd like to think that I would keep it so I could like live a comfortable life, but not blow it all throughout. Maybe buy like a bigger house. I don't know. I just paid off the house, and like maybe invest.
Yeah.
But who the hell knows?
But like, what's the one purchase that you do for yourself?
Oh, like the big thing?
Yeah, the big thing.
Fuck.
You're like, it hit my bank. I'm getting it.
I have no idea. I've never thought about it because I hate spending money. I hate shopping.
Okay.
I've never had a lot of money, so I don't know how to spend money.
You like get into like a snowball effect. You're just like, and this and this and this and this.
Right. Like I don't really ask things for my birthday or Christmas.
Yeah.
Except for books recently, because I don't have a need or want for most things. Like if I need something, I'm like, okay, I'll save up and buy it, and we got it. I don't know. What would you buy? Give me some inspiration.
I agree with you. Like, I would do the whole,
debt thing is easy. Yeah,
money
blah, blah, blah.
and blah, blah, blah,
right,
blah.
responsible.
Invest and get an analyst, whatever.
Yeah.
I would, I think my first purchase would be this penthouse that I want on. It's only $13 million. And
Easy.
if I've gotten $100 million.
Right. You can put a down payment.
That gives me $87 million left.
Or you could just buy it all outright.
I
was thinking if you got 10 million.
Oh, then I wouldn't get it.
Well, you could put a down payment.
I could put a down payment.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty nice. But then how much of a down payment? That's a lot.
$1 million.
Right.
Whatever 20% is of 13 million.
That's fair. Do you keep working?
Ooh, yes. But like, I think I would change jobs.
Okay.
I think I would get something more fun.
Sure. That's fair. I feel like I would do the Kelly Kapoor thing in The Office where she's like, if I won the lottery, I would still work, but only for a penny a day. So if I didn't show up, you're only paying me a penny a day. No, I feel like I agree with that. Like I couldn't not work.
Yeah.
I have to do something.
Right. I think I would take some time off.
Sure.
Enjoy myself. I would get an RV.
No.
And road trip around the country.
Absolutely not. In an RV?
Yeah.
Why? You could just fly to places.
But then you don't get to see as much.
You could take a train. You could get a car service. Why an RV? Then you're sleeping in the RV?
Yeah. And you're driving and you're cooking and you're camping. No, that's not you?
I think we have very different lives.
All right. I learned how to walk in an RV. Did you know that?
I get it. I get it now.
Did
you really?
Yeah, my family used to travel a bunch. We would road trip everywhere, obviously. And we took an RV out to the Southwest.
Okay.
And during that time in the RV, I learned to walk. And so at least the story that my mom says is that I learned how to walk in the RV, like down the aisle of the RV. And then when I would get out, it was like I had my sea legs, so I didn't have my land legs, so I'd like wobble around.
Is that why you walk like that today?
Yeah. And then I also turned like 1.5 to I think I turned 2 at Grand Canyon.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Big celebration. Huge. A whole streamer across the canyon.
Carried by mules all the way down.
All the way down. In celebration of. Perfect. Well, if you couldn't have guessed, the topic for today is
the lottery.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah. Which, once again, I think of the lottery as just like always kind of being there for the most part, or like maybe out of coming back from like World War II, like a social program. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Something
I mean,
like
it's been
that
around for as long as we've been alive, at least, I think.
Correct. Yes. I'm thinking in my notes. And I'm like, that date is...
I might be wrong.
How old are we?
Yeah.
Correct. But it goes all the way back to China in 200 BCE.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
I know. You never think of it.
No.
First of all, of course it does. And second of all, wouldn't have guessed.
No, especially BC.
Right. Well, and like lottery itself is like bingo is a form of lottery.
Okay.
Right? Like it's random numbers being chosen you have those selections, do they match, sort of thing, right? Not to say that the Chinese were playing bingo in 2200 BCE, but I'm just saying, like, it's there's various forms of lottery itself. And so in the Han Dynasty, they played Keno, which I don't know if you've ever been to a casino and played Keno.
I'm
Just
afraid
kind
of
of like-
casinos.
Yeah?
We'll get into that
Well,
later.
okay, next topic, folks. What do you call it? So they played Keno as a form of entertainment, but also used the funds to partially help build the Great Wall of China.
Oh.
And that's where a lot of lotteries kind of came from and are so used today, in a sense of utilizing that money to fund projects, social services, infrastructure, things of that nature.
Right.
And so it just kind of became all right, well, if we split the pot or whatever it is, the rest of that money, right? Like when we think about, I won $100 million, through taxes and everything like that, really I won, 60 million or 50, whatever it is, you know what I mean? So we see that in China. We also then jump forward a few centuries and we go into ancient Rome. The tesserae, which was like small little tiles that had numbers on them, was used as like a lottery system, and there were prizes and things of that nature. And it was used to fund public work projects and also like different festivals or like mass entertainment things. Saturnalia is a festival.
Okay.
In ancient Rome. And it was used, the lottery aspect was used within that, and people would get like tickets and they would win prizes, kind of like door prizes and things like that. This is kind of the uglier side of the lottery that we'll see. But a lot of times property, so like lots of land, as well as slaves, were kind of these quote unquote prizes. That were handed out as well. So this is kind of the other side of, we always think of the lottery as, oh my God, like you win money and, so exciting and all of these things. And then you realize, oh, right, of course that was, also cut off at the legs at some point. So just to kind of mention that as well, that like there is kind of this double-edged sword, at least in history, to the lottery itself. Moving out of ancient Rome and into Europe, into the 15th century. So we're, chugging along here. Lottery kind of used in and out of history. We have public lotteries to fund municipal projects, definitely within like Genoa, France, things like that. Building bridges, build infrastructure, works of art, even lotteries were used for. Also the Low Countries, which I didn't realize what the Low Countries were. Kind of like the Netherlands. Because they're at or below sea level.
Oh.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Well, now we know.
All right.
What did you know? And so the Low Countries use lotteries for town fortification, so like defense as well, to like build up kind of a fortress, and later for charity for the poor.
Oh,
so it's kind of split. Nice. And that's where we start to see like the beginning of like the social initiatives and like these welfare programs kind of start in the 15th century. So little by little, you start gets over to England. And by 1566, Queen Elizabeth I initiates the first lottery in England. And so that lottery is one ticket gets you 10 shillings, which back then is actually a pretty decent amount of money. So it was kind of pricey. However, the great thing about that is that, one, it's a hefty prize value, and that's great. But the ticket that you had was a literal get out of jail free card. So if you were arrested for, let's say, like petty theft or something, you could present that lottery ticket, and it was a get out of jail free card. The only things it didn't work for were piracy, murder, and treason.
I'm not surprised by those three, though.
Right? No,
I mean those are like pretty big crimes from back then,
like in general. Not just in 1500s England.
Right. That's interesting. So like, all I had to do was pay 10 shillings, and I had this Monopoly card.
Yeah, basically. Huh. But you can only use it once.
Can I buy another 10 shilling paper?
Yeah.
Probably.
I wonder if they're kind of just like, oh God, not Devin again.
Well, yeah, because like if I'm a rich son of a bitch, and then like I'm like, okay, like here we go, another 10 shillings. Like I can constantly commit crime, and I'm rich.
I also think at that point, though, if you're rich and you can keep on affording that, you kind of already have the police kind of
in your pocket.
Yeah, you're probably a part of the court at that point. But yeah, I mean, for the lower class, it's not like there was a middle class, but for the lower class, if you could afford a lottery ticket, I think great.
No, that's amazing.
Not only do you have this kind of hope and inspiration to potentially win the prize, but then it's like, if someone like accuses me of something, or if I get arrested for something, I have this get out of your free card.
Right.
And I think we should bring that back.
I mean,
why not? Okay, so we have that happening in 1566 in England. As we start to go a little bit further down the road, we start getting into, moving over into America, right? So European settlements were partially funded by lotteries. And so 1612, the Virginia Company actually obtained permission from King James I to help finance Jamestown in the New World. And so obviously the lottery was like, okay, that's fine, go ahead and do it. But lotteries, again, another kind of started America, or helped, fund the travel over here into, quote unquote, the New World.
Right.
Strong Protestant protest against any gambling, of course. So moving over, Protestants coming over, being like, we don't want to be persecuted for being Protestant. That's why we're coming over here, like this whole thing.
So I don't know if these are in your notes, but since these Protestants don't want to partake in gambling, would they no longer receive funds from the lottery that were funding their colonies?
I think it was, not in my notes, but from what I gathered, it's more so they were like, oh man, we were partially funded by the lottery. We don't like the lottery.
Thanks anyway.
Yeah, sort of thing. It was just like, we're going to take the money.
Yeah,
and
they're
just
like, oh, can we have the money back? No.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of that thing. Because as much as they were kind of, vocal about being against it, it did help in a lot of ways. And so I think it was one of those things where it's like, we're going to be vocal over here, and then other people are like, we're going to take care of it on this side of things. You know what I mean? And so the Massachusetts Bay Colony first authorized a lottery in 1745, even though dice games and card games were forbidden to even play in your private home.
Oh.
I know. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, we see the good outweighs the evil, right? Yeah. Like, we're getting money for projects, new settlements, all of these things through this lottery system. Yes, it's gambling, but we're just not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Sort of thing, right? So it was kind of like, hush hush on the side.
Yeah.
We're not going to really call it gambling because of the amount of good that it's doing for us.
Okay.
Right? And so as time passed, lotteries were used to build churches, schools, hospitals, defense initiatives. So the American Revolution was proposed to actually be partially funded by a lottery.
Oh.
It got shut down, but that was almost, the lottery almost funded the American Revolution.
Yeah.
Also, schools that were built using that money, William and Mary, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Brown, Dartmouth.
Yeah,
so all of these,
Columbia,
all of these older schools are getting partially funded through lotteries to be able to build the infrastructure for them.
Huh.
I know. I'm just like, oh my God.
Who knew gambling was so good?
Who knew? Lotteries were actually, I think with, for those that maybe don't know Hamilton, the musical, but like just history in general, Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton very kind of at odds with one another. Lotteries like one of the few things that they actually agreed upon, like the benefit of lotteries.
Yeah.
And so Hamilton, one of his quotes was, quote, people would prefer a small chance of winning a great deal to a great chance of winning a little.
Huh.
End quote. Which I agree. I think like it doesn't make sense, right? If I had a 1 in 10 chance of winning $50,
right, versus
a 1 in 100 chance of winning $500, people are like, well, I'm gonna take the risk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm going for the $500. I'm not going for the $50. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's kind of the basis of why lotteries kind of worked, is because people were willing to risk it and like constantly prey on this kind of addictive nature or this risk nature of winning money.
Yeah, I mean, if you only have to pay up like $10 and potentially win $100 million, like,
right,
why not?
We're gonna back out. Right.
But then you keep paying $10 and you run out of money.
Right. Well, and like look at imagine that story. You know what I mean? I think people also wanted to see not only the prize, but like I spent $10 and I won $100 million. You know what I mean? Like everyone loves a good story and like wants to, be a part of that. So that's all the fun and exciting kind of side and like building of municipal projects. Back to kind of the ugly side at this time.
Yeah, we're about to get in the shit show.
Yeah, welcome back, everyone, to reality. So lotteries were also kind of getting tangled up and used within the slave trade. So George Washington, I know, actually once managed a Virginia-based lottery with slaves as prizes.
Yikes.
On the kind of silver lining within the lottery.
So small.
Barely saw it.
Right.
But Denmark Vesey purchased his freedom, was a slave, purchased his freedom from winning the South Carolina lottery.
Oh.
And then after winning it, led a slave rebellion.
Hell yeah.
I was just like, amazing. Look at that story. So I was like, that was like, how do I find something like to uplift just a little bit?
Yeah.
Which is just incredible. And so not only that he won the lottery,
right,
like was designated as someone who could win the
that's
lottery,
surprising as a slave that he was
but
able to do
then
that.
able to like then lead a slave rebellion. And I said, hell yeah. Yeah, use that to buy your freedom and then like bust all your friends out.
Right.
Let's do it. Yeah, 100%. So all of that's happening. We get into 1833 to 1880. We have a lot of individual state lotteries kind of happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then between this time period, all states eventually shut down lotteries due to mismanagement and fraud. So basically, it was just super corrupt, right? People were like, yeah, thanks so much. Here's that prize. And then shuffling the money everywhere else, right?
Right.
The Louisiana State Lottery Company was the last one standing after everything got shut down. So 1880, they're the last ones. They're selling, lottery tickets through the mail. Mm-hmm. It kind of becomes this interstate sort of thing. They're making tons and tons of money. And the federal government eventually stepped in to shut it down in 1890, passing a law prohibiting the interstate promotion or sale of lottery tickets.
Huh.
So they were eventually like, this company is just too corrupt and it's like fucking everyone over. And so we now have to step in to actionably shut it down. So 1890 is the last time we see a statewide lottery.
Okay.
Or a legal lottery.
Right.
So in the absence of legal lotteries, we now have illegal lotteries coming around, right? Of course.
Back alley stuff.
Right, exactly. So it kind of becomes a numbers game. Before that, we kind of start to lead also into the Industrial Revolution. And so while some of the lotteries were still around, you also have urbanization led to increased poverty, of course, as we know. And lotteries were used to address these issues from infrastructure development and social welfare initiatives. So it was kind of positive still in that light, but just because that time was so corrupt and only gaining traction in that, the shutdown had to happen. You know what I mean? At least that's what they thought. We go into illegal lotteries or numbers games, correctly guessing like daily 3-digit numbers, right? And now when you think of that, that could be so skewed and kind of corrupt in its own way, because that could be like, oh yeah, I have the 3 numbers in my head, and then you guess them and I'm like, I don't want you to win. Nope, those aren't the numbers. You know what I mean? Like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so what they did was, which was actually pretty smart, they based the numbers on publicly available and ever-changing numbers. So like how much money was traded in like the total day for the New York Stock Exchange. Does that make sense?
So they based off the winning lotto numbers off of the New York Stock Exchange?
So let's say like today, or let's say today, the New York Stock Exchange traded $434,000.
Yeah.
Right? 434 are those 3 numbers. And then the next day, they traded $516,000. 516 are those 3 numbers.
Oh.
So no one has real control over that, right? Other than the stocks itself, but no one's like, that would be like a really deep con. Like if you were able to truly control that. But they were publicly available.
Yeah.
And no one could kind of have their hand in it, and like everyone could see. It's not kind of this like one-off deal sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, that actually is really smart.
Crazy.
Yeah, 100%. So that's kind of where it started. To kind of think about how big these games got, in 1964, numbers games racked in $200 million in New York City alone, which today is $2 billion.
Just in New York.
Just in New York, in 1 year, these illegal number games racked in $2 billion in today's money.
That's wild.
Isn't that insane? In 1964. Because
Yeah.
when I think about this, like, again, time as a structure, I'm like, oh, this is like 1920s, right? Or like 1930, like in the middle of the whatever, right?
Right.
No, this is 1964.
Yeah, well, because like you think back in the 20s, early 1900s, like you think, oh, like a lot of mafia involvement,
right?
Like organized crime was big back then. I mean, it still is.
Yeah.
But
we didn't say that.
but like you kind of think of like all these back alley deals being
right.
involved with the old timey organized crime, but to have it in the 1960s, that's what?
Right. And so a lot of these were actually prominent in black communities where it provided much income. So like even before the 64 is kind of like the biggest it kind of ballooned to, right? But before that, you have really prominent in these areas with a very heavy black population, with even Ella Fitzgerald and Malcolm X being organizers of some of these events. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like, get your money where you can. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That's crazy.
And so a lot of these large prizes also helped families in the community. So someone like Luther Theophilus Powell won $10,000 after betting like $25 on a game, which, great story, amazing amount of money, and bought a house in Queens for his wife, daughter, and son, Colin Powell.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh. Casual. Rise to fame through the lottery. And so the downside to that, at least with how lucrative these games were getting, is that organized crime kind of caught wind of how much how much was coming in, and with the help of bribed police officers, of course, shut down black operators and took over the games.
Oh.
So now,
Lame.
Correct. And so now we're in the 1950s, and there's scare and concern kind of surrounding the power of the mob at this point, right? So now you've shut down all of this lucrative business within these black communities. The mob has taken over. Organized crime now has like super big funding. Where in the 50s, there's kind of this moral aspect coming back into things, right? And so the Senate starts an investigation, which dove kind of into the financials of organized crime in America. Their idea of that was to be like, oh, we're going to be tough on organized crime, and people are going to see like how crazy organized crime is and how lucrative and all these things, and people are going to like kind of be like down with gambling and all of these things, right? Kind of backfired a bit because media coverage kind of had the opposite effect, where they were hoping for showing how lucrative the game could be, these number games, these lotteries could be. State governments were kind of like, well, we kind of want to be a part of it.
We want a piece of that pie.
We want some of that money. And so it kind of was like, oh, maybe we should start thinking about doing state lotteries again. Remember, 1890 was the last time, the last one, right? And so it's been a minute between we've seen that, but if they're being this lucrative and people are a part of it and want to like actually do it, hell yeah, why the fuck not? Let's get on that. Right, exactly. Yeah. So now we're into the 1960s. And we have rising population, of course. We have inflation. We have the Vietnam War. Let me try that again. We have the Vietnam War. Yikes. Costs. And states are finding it difficult to kind of balance their budget. A lot of times, they don't want to raise. They don't want to raise taxes. They also don't want to cut social services. Like, it's kind of this balancing act, right?
And I mean, especially funding all these wars that are happening in that era, the Cold War and whatnot. They need money.
Right. And so they kind of have, on a political kind of viewpoint, they're like, well, we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. You know what I mean? And so they're like, well, what's our kind of golden ticket? And lottery was kind of the perfect solution. You're gaining money without raising taxes or cutting, public services, because you're taking that money to fund those services. And so it kind of became this, well, maybe we should do that. You know what I mean? And they argued that since it was going to happen, like since, gambling or lotteries illegally were going to happen, we might as well, just take it over. Right? It's like that mom who's like, well, if you're going to drink, I'd rather you drink in the house. Right? Like, you can kind of like control it.
Right.
It gets a little like morally shaky, because where do you draw the line? Yeah. Right? If illegal activity is happening and you want to now control it, are you going all the way to like drugs? You know what I mean? Like, what are we?
Well, I mean, I was about to bring that up. I mean, like, the government is slowly legalizing, well, I don't know about it anymore, but the government is slowly legalizing marijuana across the board in many states. So, like, the government was like, well, people are going to be smoking pot anyway, so let me get a piece of that pie.
Right.
And I can get taxes off of it and whatnot. And now we have legal dispensaries in Illinois and a couple other states. So, like,
I remember voting, and it was kind of the question was, are you okay? And we kind of get into this a little bit of the opposition to bringing lotteries back is, are you okay with, taxes coming from marijuana sales then being like utilized to fund public schools. And I said, fuck yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, why not? Like, it's money is money.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, it's not like you're like, oh, like we got it from all these shady things. I'm like, someone went into a legal store, bought something, you now have the taxes, give it to schools.
Right.
Why does that matter? Like, what are you talking about?
Oh, this education's funded by pot money.
Right.
Get out.
Exactly.
Like, that doesn't matter.
Exactly.
I'm just happy to have another public school for these kids. Like,
right.
goddamn.
Like, can we just look at like the overall like good that this could do? Like, geez, like why are we getting so? Anyway, so that again, we kind of have that kind of goes into the opposition of these lotteries. One other aspect of kind of within this as well, within like the advocates that argued for the lotteries to happen again, a little bit of racially charged as well. And not in a great way, but of course, white voters were like, lotteries are great because now they can fund things that we don't want to fund. So at this point, white voters have moved out of cities and into suburbs, right? And so they're more affluent than people of color communities, right, within urban environments. However, these schools need to be funded in urban environments, right? And they need to be, developed, and they need to grow and become better and all these things. And people in the suburbs were like, I don't want to pay for that.
Right.
Well, now the lottery can do that, right? And then you have black voters who supported it because it starts to ease the tension with police who were using number games to legally or illegally stop, question and imprison black people within their own community.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. And so they were it's like this really fucked up line that they're both pulling from, but they're like, yeah, we're for it because it helps us in different ways.
Right.
Right. However fucked up those ways are. And so again, the opponents argue the ethics of using gambling money to fund public services and how much money can the state really gain. So on one end, you have devout Protestants. Again, they're back. Don't you worry. I know.
Never left.
I know. You were concerned. I'm bringing them back. Devout Protestants were the loudest. However, Catholics loved the idea, which I think is hysterical.
All right.
Because in every Catholic, like any Catholic community, there's like the devout Catholics who are always at church and always doing the right and all these things. And then you have kind of like the laid back Catholics, like the Creasters, who only go to church like on Christmas and Easter and like are super chill, whatever. And so they were all for it. And so they were big lottery players once it became, legal. It was also a gateway into other gambling. And so bingo, there was a note that I saw that was in 1978 in Ohio Catholic high schools, bingo games took in more money than the state's lottery. Isn't that amazing?
That's ridiculous.
I think that's hysterical. I think that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And so it's like one of those things where like even within religion, they're like, why the fuck not? And so also there was kind of this idea of on the ethical side of things, you're fostering, gambling addictions, pulling money from the poor, maximizing profits at the expense of the state's most vulnerable citizens.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're really, if I have money, I'm not really playing the lottery.
No.
I have the money. You know what I mean?
I don't need to risk anything because I already have it.
Correct. And so for a lot of times lottery players are, you're lower class, middle now-ish, but really you're lower class. And so you're kind of, only harboring this kind of cycle of, this vulnerable community because you're getting their hopes up and they're just kind of, falling into this kind of addiction almost. Not all the time, but it can happen, right? Well, they didn't really care. And so in 1964, New Hampshire approves the first state-run lottery. New Hampshire was also devoid of taxes. So they had no income tax. They had no sales tax. Same thing with like New Jersey, right? So they're kind of like, what do we do?
How do we get money?
And this is how we do it, right? So 1964, the first state-run lottery, and this is the first time there's been a legal lottery since, again, 1890. So a long time. 13 other states followed within the first years post New Hampshire. Okay. So not every state, but 13 other states. So we're starting to spread out a little bit. You know what I mean? Between 1978 and early 1980s, property taxes were significantly cut. And with Reagan in the White House, federal money to states' budgets declined. So now we're back to trying to balance the budget, and lottery looked more and more appealing, so then more states are starting to adopt the lottery, right? In 1973, Scientific Games Incorporated is founded with a solution that leads the way for the production and sale of the world's first secure instant lottery game, which is scratch-offs.
Huh.
Yeah. And so scratch-offs kind of come and become a success with active participation, right? People are like, I'm no longer just like picking, like it's not like full chance, right? Like lotteries kind of are, I pick a few numbers, whatever pull is pulled, and it's kind of chance.
Yeah.
Scratch-offs were so active that it kind of had this illusion of control.
Yeah, you can pick which things you want to scratch off with your quarter, or just like, all right, I picked this ticket. It's a little bit of activity.
Right.
It's like a coloring page.
It's as much luck as anything else.
Right.
But yeah, it kind of became the illusion became so popular. Yeah. Right. So it debuted in Massachusetts in 1974, and by 1976, every state that had a lottery now had scratch-offs as well.
Wow.
Which is great. However, you kind of saturate the market at that point, right? Like if only 14 states have the lottery and I've sent off scratch-offs and now there's other competitors within the market, well, now what the fuck do I do? You know what I mean? Because other states aren't adopting the lottery, right? So SGI was smart, and they hired lobbyists. And so the lobbyists, and they spent millions to convince states to adopt the lottery.
Of course.
And so it was actually, it was actually really smart. And so SGI basically, like, because you had to go to these states and be like, I want to throw my hat in the ring for you to take up my contract to be able to run your lottery in your state.
Okay.
Right? So SGI is like, great, I'm going to throw a contract in. My contract is going to say we are going to disclose like very intimate financial reports from our executives and our parent company's executives.
Okay.
SGI is pretty small.
Yeah.
Right? So SGI can just quickly be like, boom, done.
Yeah.
Here it is. Right? Their competitors, however, are not. And so like their largest competitor was owned by a parent company that was bigger than like Coca-Cola, 3M, like all of these things. So if they had to if their competitor had to kind of disclose these financial records, and then the parent company executives had to do that, but you have your arm in so many different directions, it would take so much time.
Yeah.
And so SGI was like, look, we'll turn over full financial records. We're going to do it in this quick deadline. And then, you take us up under contract. And states were like, yeah, of course.
Done.
Yeah,
it's easy, it's fast. Let's get it over with.
The competitors weren't able to do it. It was so burdensome to be able to get all that information and so quickly.
Right.
And so SGI won every time.
Wow.
And so the lobbying, basically, they spent $2 million. They ended up getting like $45 million in contracts. So
fuck.
I'm going to spend the $2 million if I'm getting back.
I'm going to pay $10 to get.
Right. Exactly.
I'm going to spend $2 million.
So the lottery was really great. Yeah. And then through 1979, jackpots rarely exceeded $1 million. So they were still kind of low. So it's not like to the degree of what we see today, right? Because again, it's only state specific.
Right.
Like, yes, you have this rollover game where if people don't win, it kind of continues to grow. More people are buying tickets, kind of this predatory aspect of the rollover game, right? And the pot gets bigger, but you have this imbalance with states, right? So you have a state like Montana with not the same population as a state like New York. You know what I mean? So the pot can only get so big, right? And it's kind of, states didn't really like that. So what they did was they started to band together and form multi-state lotteries.
Oh.
And that's where you kind of get the beginning of Powerball and Mega Millions.
Oh.
Yes. And so in 1985, Tri-State Megabucks, what a name. It's the first multi-state lottery with Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont.
Can you imagine being the CEO of Tri-State Megabucks?
And actually workshopping that.
Right.
What should we call this? So that happens in 1985. 1987, Multi-State Lottery Association is formed, and 6 initial members are a part of it. And their first big game was called Lotto America, which a little bit better, right? We'll take
Easy.
it. In 1988, and then in 1992, that was replaced by Powerball.
Okay.
So Lotto America becomes Powerball. Right?
Yeah.
In 1996, the big game is what it's called.
Okay.
is introduced by several larger states, right? Because again, Powerball is only in a few smaller states, right? We have 6 members, smaller states banding together. The larger states were like, hey, that's actually a pretty good idea. And so they start to offer mega jackpots called the big game. But then in 2002, that's replaced by Mega Millions.
Oh.
So up until 2010, these places operated separately.
Okay.
So like Illinois had the like let's say Mega Millions, but then Iowa had Powerball.
Oh.
I couldn't play, you know what I mean?
You couldn't do both. Yeah.
You couldn't do both. And so it wasn't until 2010 where American lotteries could sell both Powerball and Mega Million tickets. And so that was 2010.
Wow.
I know.
Okay.
Kind of crazy. Like that's relatively recent. You know what I mean?
Very, yeah.
Very. And so I was just kind of like, that's wild. But that changed the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, very recent considering we started this conversation all the way back in
200 BCE?
Yeah.
Yeah.
BC.
Correct. And so that's kind of the first time where nationally you can play these huge jackpots, right? And so that kind of takes over. Now, every state still has like their own lottery as well,
yeah,
right? There is
state specific. Right.
Like for us, the Illinois lottery, there's like the Daily Lotto and like things like that. Yeah. But overall, you're looking kind of at this national multi-state lottery, right? Which I don't really know how the breakdown is. I'm sure they've kind of orchestrated, from there.
Right.
But the only states that don't have a lottery are Alabama, Alaska, Hawaii, Nevada, and Utah.
Nevada.
I feel like Nevada's okay. You know what I mean? I feel like they got other stuff going on.
They're getting a lot of other taxes elsewhere. Right. But I'm surprised because of Vegas that they don't have the lottery.
Right. Why not just throw that on there?
Right. You're already gambling so much.
Well, and imagine winning the lottery in Vegas.
And then you just put that money. Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
$1 billion on red. Like, let's go. Come on, the right person gets that?
Right.
Right. We don't want that to happen. I'm just saying.
But like, come on.
But come on. Right, exactly. That's a great story. And so that's kind of 2010 that all happens, right? Yeah. 2014, you're welcome, the rest of the country. Illinois launches America's first lottery app. Oh. So you can actually purchase lottery tickets online.
Oh.
Yeah.
We started that, huh?
We did. We
said team, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I get a little more technological.
If there's an app for a lighter or to pretend like I'm drinking a beer, why not a lottery app?
Why not a lottery app? And it just kind of creates a more, I wouldn't say accessible, but kind of.
Yeah, you know I mean, you don't have to go down to the gas station to pick up your lotto.
Right. And not that everyone has access to the internet, but it creates more accessibility in the sense of convenience.
Exactly.
It's more convenient to just play on your phone.
You don't have to make an effort to go. You
right.
can just do it while you're sitting on the couch.
Exactly. And so with that, you start to see kind of the jackpots rise a little bit more and more and more, right? So in 2016, we have the largest jackpot at that time recorded, which was $1.58 billion.
Wow.
Which I remember that. That was crazy. That was someone in Illinois. Oh, no, not. Yeah, 2016. Someone in Illinois won it.
No way.
Yeah.
I don't remember this one.
It was like, I think it was two separate people or like a couple.
Yeah.
Won it in Illinois. And I was like, it was like Palatine or something like that. And I was like, classic.
Could have been me.
Could have been me. So close. An hour away. And then 2022, $2.04 billion jackpot.
I went into an office pool for that one.
Did you?
Yeah, I put $5 down. Because this guy was like, hey, we're doing an office pool for the lotto. It's at this amount of money. Do you want it? And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. It's only $5. Like, I'm not buying the ticket. I'm not gonna. So this is why I don't like casinos.
Here we go.
I am afraid I'm going to fall into the gambling pit of like, okay. It's just $5 more. It's just $5 more.
Right.
And like I know myself, I don't have like a super addictive personality per se, but I know I fall into some traps.
Yeah.
And so like I just don't trust myself. Also, like I said earlier, I hate spending money and I don't know how to spend money. So why would I just want to willy-nilly like throw money away at a chance that I will lose?
No, you gotta go in and be like, all right, I got $200. And I'm only
that's
spending,
it.
and that's
right,
it.
Right.
Like
that's
my
my wallet
cash.
Elsewhere.
Leave it in the car, whatever. Right. I got $200. I'm gonna spend it. Now I haven't been to a casino in a long time.
Okay.
When I do gamble though, I want to like craps table. I want that illusion of control where I'm like actively doing something.
Well, craps is fun though because like you're on a team with the rest of the table. You're not gambling against anyone except the house.
Right.
You're on a team with everyone. You're all like cheering for each other. It's fun.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't trust myself.
Have you been to a casino?
No, never.
Would you?
No.
Like, well, if we went, right? Like, if I was like, all right, like, Dev, here's $100. Like, you get $100.
Thanks,
like,
Uncle Nick.
Yeah. See? And then you go play it. You wouldn't do it.
I would go, but I wouldn't be happy.
Just a constant
frown. Yeah, and maybe after some expensive drinks, I'd be a little bit more relaxed.
What's the best part of Vegas is that well, I don't know about it anymore. It's been a minute since I've been there, but the drinks are free because you're gambling on the casino floor.
Right.
If you're actively at a slot machine, whatever, they'll be like, "What do you want?" And you'll be like, "Oh, I'll have a Heineken." No, I don't know why I said whatever. That's what I drank last time I was there.
Right.
And then you tip them, of course.
Of course.
Your cocktail server.
They're doing a service, yeah.
Right. But then you're like, all right, I'll throw back, 10 Heinies. That was bad.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, throw back 10 Heinies.
Correct. But that's the best part. And then you're getting, well, that's not the best part. I'm actively giving you many different addictions, just lining one after the other. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So that's why I don't like casinos.
All right. Fair enough. I'll give it to you. Okay. We're still going to go.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Maybe.
So that's kind of the state of lotteries after all of that. So now we just kind of play. But the big thing, I guess what else I'll say is that, bringing lotteries back into state lotteries back in the 60s, right? It was very much how do we as a state continue to bring in money without taxation and, all of these things. And the funny thing is that actually lotteries only amass for 1% of a state's budget. On average, only 1% of a state's budget.
Is it because of the low chances of someone winning?
I think it's that. And also, if you think about an entire state's budget, I win. I think people are winning, so not frequently, but if I'm winning a $38 million jackpot,
right,
or if I'm winning, a $5 million jackpot, and the state's taking, $2 million,
yeah,
in the grand schemes of a state, you know what I mean?
Right. At that point, it's a drop in the bucket for the state.
Exactly. Money's money, and that's
right.
Great.
It'll help fund something,
but it's not. And that was kind of the opponent side of it, where it's just well, how much are you really amassing from allowing this kind of legalized,
right, from this devil's game?
Correct.
Yeah.
And now it's just kind of a fun thing to do, but it still does have a lot of consequences on the side of more vulnerable communities.
Yeah.
And lower class people who are kind of in this, I want to be a millionaire. And when we think about the early 2000s of what was it, Millionaire Joe or something like that, or
Joe Millionaire?
Yeah.
The dating show?
Yeah, you get it.
Joe Millionaire.
But you kind of start to idolize these. I mean, you even see that in the early 1900s, right? I mean, throughout history, but you start to idolize and want to become these very famous and rich people.
Right.
And this kind of get rich quick sort of thing within American culture. And so how do I do that? Well, I play the lottery.
Right. Well, I mean, even Donald Trump was idolized back in the 90s, 2000s because of his money and his status. And so he was in a Home Alone movie, for God's sake. He had his own show, the You're Fired or whatever.
The Apprentice?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're helping each other out today, folks.
So there was that whole status of being a millionaire, having money. And I think especially too, you were saying back in the early 2000s, I mean, there was that whole crash, the market crash and stuff like that, the housing crisis, that really drove people, I believe, to buying up the lotto tickets, wanting to get out of whatever hellhole they were in.
Right. Well, and I think also early 2000s being this very big push for reality television. So now you start to blur the lines of reality and then 15 minutes of fame and all of these things where it's oh, well, that's an average person that I see on the TV making money, just living their life.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Right.
And how do I do that quickly?
Right.
I get a lottery ticket.
Yeah. And then we could take that and put it to social media today of Instagram and TikTok and oh, these Joe Schmoes are being famous and getting money from making stupid content.
Right.
And that's what we're doing here on What
And
You
we're
Know.
a part of it. We're a part of the problem.
Well, we're not in it for the money.
Yeah. Just the good times.
Yeah. Educating the people, because that's what we do here.
And if you go to patreon.com,
please give us money.
But no, I completely agree. But I think that, as fun as it can be, and if you can afford it, that's great. And that's awesome. And if you win, amazing. But there is always the downside of that as well.
Right.
And so I just keeping those two things in mind as we go through, going through this, I was like, oh, I'm gonna buy a lottery. I'm gonna just jump on IllinoisLottery.com. You know what I mean? Like,
Don't download. I'm gonna parental block the app.
okay. Perfect. Thank you. Looking out.
Yeah.
So yeah, lotteries, good things, bad things. They fund projects and such, which is great. Just kind of at a consequence.
Yeah.
And so just being more cautious. You know what I mean? Like you throw down $5-10, every other month. Great. You can afford that. That's awesome. Just like don't get addicted.
Right.
And I think that's easy to do.
Easy message.
Yeah.
Hey, for all of you people going through a hard time, don't get addicted.
Don't get addicted.
Thanks.
Perfect. And that's my PSA for today.
Addiction? No.
No. That's all I have to say. No.
Well, thanks for teaching me about the lottery.
You're welcome. And now you can tell people it started in 200 BC
Perfect.
in China. That's really the only
next
thing
time there's
to
an
remember.
office pool, while I'm digging out my wallet, be like, hey, did you know this started?
When you get that at a trivia and you win money, you're going to come back here and you're going to say,
I'll give
"Listen."
you my dues.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was like 10%. Thank you. All right, that's it. That's all I got.
Yeah, thanks again for teaching me all about that. And thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah.
You'll be able to find us everywhere on the internet, on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. We might have a website coming up soon.
Oh my God.
I
Look out for
gotta
it.
look into that.
Launched. We'll get there.
And you can also listen to this podcast wherever you may find podcasts.
Perfect. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, Nick.
Bye, Dev.
Okay, bye.
Bye.